Hi guys, so I get quite a few requests to do different videos, and the one I get a lot is the one about doing wax rims. And I've done one before, but I don't think I've done one with commentary to it, or if I have done, it's been a while and I can't find it. So today I'm going to show you guys how to do a wax rim for the maxillary base plate. Um, I don't have any mandibular ones today, at least not the full arch ones. But we're going to start off with a maxillary one and go from there. So basically what I use for my wax rims is I use some sticky wax, medium hardness base plate wax, and preformed wax rims. Now these wax rims are made by Gebdi, and so is the wax as well. I really like this wax because it's has pretty decent parameters. I don't have to shape it too much, and it smells like vanilla. So the downside with this wax, it's really hard. It's also the upside because it's really hard. It really keeps its shape, and you get really exact parameters where you need to. But the problem is if you try to cut it, it can crack on you. So basically, what I do is I'll put it in a dehydrator, and my dehydrator is set to about 160 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'll put it in there right now for about 3 to 5 minutes. All right, now that's going into a dehydrator. I'm going to set my timer for 3 minutes so I don't forget that it's in there. Now, if we're looking at the maxilla, right? Let's take a look at our model so we kind of have an idea what's going on. So basically, if we look at our incisive papilla, so from the center of the incisive papilla to the incisal edge of the tooth is usually between 7 to 10 millimeters, which is in our case is going to be right about right here. Okay, so I know that I need to extend my wax to about right here. This is where going to be my approximation of my incisal edge, or if it's too much, we can always trim it back. Now we also know that we don't want to put any wax on the tuberosity, so we know we need to stop our wax right about here. Now if you can just visually see that pretty easily through the base plate, you don't need to mark anything, but if you're just first starting out, it's a good idea to mark things. All right, so now that I have those things marked, what I basically am going to do is I'm going to put some sticky wax on my base plate in order to make sure when we're doing this stuff intraorally that none of my wax will slide off the base plate. Now my base plates are usually printed. As you can see right here, they have this funny orange color, which is absolutely fine as long as we have an FDA approved material and it's a good fitting material, which I 3D print. I like to do 3D printing for my base plates. So you don't need to do a lot of sticky wax. This should be enough right here. We're just going to wipe off our spatula, just like that. So from this point, what we're going to do is we're going to take some base plate wax, and we're going to warm that up, just like that, just so it's nice and soft. Once you see it starting to go about that milky color, you pretty much have the softness that you want. And I'm just going to roll that up like this. And from this point, we're going to create our little shape. Okay, so I'm going to leave this right here for just a second, and I'm going to grab my wax rim, which at this point has been in there for about 2 minutes or so, but you see how it's softened up and I can actually shape it. Now, what we're looking at is we look at our arch form, and we want to make sure that our wax kind of follows that. So what we're basically going to do is we're going to make it a little bit wider, and we know that our wax needs to go to about that green mark right there. So I made it a little bit wider like this. Also, you don't want to get it off the center of the ridge, so about that much is pretty good. Now we also don't want it to go on our tuberosities, so what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to take and cut this just a little bit, about this much, so we're away from our tuberosities. Okay, let's double check that real quick. It looks like we're good and far enough away from our tuberosities not to have any issues. All right, so now we're going to take our base plate wax that we rolled up. It's still pretty warm. I'm just going to rewarm it up just a little bit. All right. We're going to cut that little piece off. All right, and we're going to shape it right here. Now this is just the way that I do things. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to do things the same way that I do, but this has worked well for me over the years, and this is the way I like to do it. So I'm reheating my sticky wax to make sure this stuff sticks to it. All right, so that looks good. That kind of gives me a nice base to stick the base plate wax to. Not base plate, I mean wax rim wax. This is the base plate wax. All right, now we're just gonna warm it up even more, right on the base. Okay, and now we start adapting it to this, lining it up where we need to line it up. It's looking pretty good. Now we have to follow the camper's plane, right? So on the back it's going to be shorter than it is going to be on the front. So you're just going to push this down this way. And what I basically will do is I'll remove this from my model. Sometimes it's a little bit harder than it looks because these are well-fitting base plates. And then I'll measure about 5 millimeters away from the frena. I'll start my measurement, and I want my wax to be about 22 millimeters from that point. So I'm a little bit taller than I need to be. So I'm going to push it down another 2 millimeters or so. And right now we're going to be at about a little bit more. Now it looks like about 22. If you're a little bit taller, it's not a big deal. You can always shape it down. I'd rather be a little bit tall than too short because adding wax to it is a little bit harder than cutting wax away. And this is the reason why I like using medium hardness wax, because it's a lot easier to shape with your fingers. So I'll basically just try to form the rest of my base with my fingers right there. Okay, now we have all this excess wax we don't need anymore, so I'm going to cut that right off. And cut that off as well. All right. Shape a little bit right here and right here. Okay, making sure I'm still on the ridge. That looks pretty good to me. All right, now we're going to get rid of all this extra wax here by shaping it and cutting it. That looks good. Okay, so at this point we're going to grab one of our forming instruments. I'm going to start blending everything in just a little bit better. Just a little bit forward more. Okay, good. Looks pretty good. Trying to make it at about 80 degrees. Okay, not 90 like this, but about 80. And there's instruments you can also use to shape it more exactly, but for this time being, I'm just going to do it by hand. I'll clean up the little frenum attachments right here. That looks pretty good. Now we just got to do the inside, or palatal, as we might call it. Blending everything in. Okay, that looks good. Now, some of you will say that I'm spending way too much time on these wax rims, and it's not necessary to do it this precise. Or some of you might say that I'm not doing it precise enough. It's all a matter of an opinion, I'm guessing. But this is the way that I like to do mine, and I've been doing it like this for a while, and it seems to work for me and my patients, and also my clients that see their own patients. So for me, that works. And All right, so this is an approximation how we're going to get it. I try not to put too much wax right here. I don't need to make this base any thicker than it needs to be, because right now it's about 2 millimeters in thickness, and that's how I'd like to keep it. Okay. All right, so at this point, I'm going to put it back on the model, and I need to adjust to make sure I get my camper's plane. And for that, what I usually use is an instrument like this. Okay, so this is called a wax rim former. Got some wax stuck to it. So I'm going to place this ledge right here on the handler notches, and I'm going to push down until I get to the front where it's 22 millimeters. And that's usually going to be my hip plane, which matches my camper's plane pretty closely. So I'm just going to heat this up. I'm just using a butane torch to do all of this. All right, so I got to heat it up nice. And what I'm basically doing is I'm placing it right here, right on the handler notches. I'm going to push down until all my surfaces are touching, and I got a good hip plane going on right here, which should technically parallel to my camper's plane. And then I'm just going to go quickly and just smooth things out just a little bit more on the sides, so it's nice and pretty. And I'm going to clean up a little bit of excess wax that I have right here. And we should be good to go with our wax rims. Let's double check and make sure we are on the middle of our ridge, which looks good. We're about 80 degrees right here, about 22 millimeters in height, about 7 to 9 millimeters from the center of the incisive papilla forward, and we're not on our tuberosities. So we should be good to go with our maxillary wax rim for this particular patient. Hope you enjoyed this little video. Good luck, and I'll see you next time.